Great. Thanks for taking the time to see our presentation. We are going to be having a conversation with Grupo Tress Internacional. Particularly, Armando Valenzuela is going to share with us their transformation process using AWS Transform for .NET. The service was launched a few months ago, so they started in a fair release. Now at Reinvent, there are a lot of launches that you have already seen, so we are gonna go through those as well. But let's hear what are Grupo Tress challenges regarding their modernization efforts, right? So this is the agenda. We're gonna go through a quick introduction. We're gonna present Grupo Tress Internacional, what they do. Armando is going to dive deep into their challenges. He's gonna share with us their transformation path, their transformation journey regarding all the key lessons learned that they got into their path while transforming their solution. And this is very interesting. He's going to dive deep into the architecture. As you know, this session is a level 300, so expect deep technical content. And also the demonstration of the service and benefits that it's going to be led by Tiago, and what's next in terms of lessons learned and what's the next adventure from Grupo Tress. Now, who is Grupo Tress Internacional? So, Grupo Tress is a leading Mexican company. They are focused on human resources management, payroll processing, and attendance control solutions. They have a long heritage. They have been building software since 1991. So you can imagine that they have a lot of legacy code out there. And their solution has been evolving during these years. They are headquartered in Tijuana, not so far from here. And by 2024, GTI, as we call them, reached 68% coverage of all Mexico's manufacturing employees. So imagine that you are receiving your payroll and you are working at the manufacturing sector. You may want to receive your payments week by week or every 15 days. So this is how it works for the manufacturing sector in Mexico in particular. And they reach more than 1,200 customers and up to 4.4 million employees. So they have a pretty large impact out there. So let me introduce Armando Valenzuela, who is the head of engineering.
Buenos dias, bom dia in Portuguese, right, Tiago? And good morning, everyone. Let me just introduce myself really quickly. I have been working in Grupo Tress for more than 20 years. And I started working on a legacy Windows on-premise applications. Yes, I worked with Delphi in that time. No shame on that. Then I moved to working on cloud-native serverless applications. And now I work as a part of the architecture enablement team. We serve multiple product development teams as well. So picture this. You have more than 4 million of users trying to request to your app, right? They're trying to do something meaningful with your application in a Friday's evening. Customers are calling technical support for your help. The product teams are really stressful. And this application is running on a legacy code of more than 10 years, running on a Windows install that doesn't escalate as you think or as you wish. Well, surely that is not a happy Friday for everyone. And that happened to us early this year, week by week. And well, a lot of people was involved in that. And including infrastructure team and support. And I mentioned this quote, the leading sources of technical debt are architectural choices, because it's important to remark that migration the code to a newer versions of .NET is not the important issue here. You need to think broader, to not derive in a technical debt that you're going to heritage to your new employees at your company in the following years, right? So this modernization approach is something that we think in our organization because our mission is just experience the joy of improving lives. And the lives that we are improving is not just our customers or the employees, but also our developers. So with this modernization, we could do the both things, right? One, delivery a better service to our end users, and also improve the developer experience for our developers. What challenges do we have? Well, basically, more than challenges, these are the pillars that we follow in this migration. One is stay customer-centric, right? We needed to meet scalability and performance needs. The second one, stay cost-effective. In this way, we need to reduce the operational costs and simplify the modernization and maintenance efforts. And that's related to the developer experience. Also, zero downtime requirements. This was a crucial need when you migrate a critical production workload. Yeah, you need to do it without disrupting payroll operations or customer SLAs. Okay, let me explain the application context. This is a very Mexican thing because the Mexican government requires for every payroll slip to be notified to the Mexican Tax Administration Service. It's like the IRS, but in Mexico. So basically, the process begins when the payroll manager or administrator, using our HR management suites. In this case, we have Sistema Tress on premises and Revolution as a software as a service that it's running on AWS. They send all the payroll data through the payroll stamping services that we provide to them. Because, well, we have security guidelines. I'm not allowed to explain to you all the VPCs, all the integration with networking and such, but I tried to explain the features that payroll stamping services provide. Then, after the payroll manager sends all the data, then the employee, through our self-service HR application, the employee is able to download to get the payroll slip. And that's a huge deal for the employees in Mexico, and I'm sure here in the US as well. But for legal reasons, the companies are obligated to report those payroll on time. If that happens, the company could have some legal issues with their unions or with their employees directly. So what it works that we have here a legacy XML PDF engine that actually generates the PDF of the invoice, right? And we replace this service with a Lambda service practically. And this Lambda has around 2 million of requests daily. And some days, peak days, we have up to 4 million of requests. And for our services, this is the most used endpoints in our office infrastructure. Okay. This is just an overall view of the monolith architecture. This is basic and elastic beanstalk, containerized application that runs on 2 availability zones and multiple regions as well. And I don't want to say that beanstalk is not running well. Actually, it's running phenomenal. But the issues that we have with beanstalk is that it doesn't increase the instances as we expect, right? It's not hasn't the same velocity than a Lambda. So using AWS Transform, what was our transformation approach? Well, I recommend to be prepared. And I'm not talking about the product developers or engineers. I'm talking about your code, right? The first thing that I suggest to do is to analyze which projects are the most or the best candidate to migrate. You surely need, after that, after selecting the best project that matches your needs of this migration, you need to organize your legacy projects. Talking about our experience, we had a lot of dependencies talking about NuGet packages on our solutions. And I would like to ask you something. Please raise your hand if you are dealing with NuGet or packages dependencies issues. Yeah, just a few. Perhaps it was just a fast, but yeah, when our projects, we had like 70 NuGet packages involved, some private and some public, right? And we removed around 23 unneeded packages. That's normal because the developers actually get and add NuGet packages as they need, and with the inherited dependencies, they add multiple and unneeded NuGet packages, right? That's common. Also, just to report that we had more than 135,000 lines of code. This is lines of code of the entire suite, right? You also need to have your unit tests in order, and if you don't have them, that's okay. You can create it later, but you need to have it in mind to compare the before and after. Okay, with AWS Transform, we were able to automatically migrate from 4.6 to .NET 8, and AWS Transform helped us to validate most of the code. And also the packages were updated. But we need to take care about the less of the 100% of the code. There was a lot. There are not just a few lines, but with the help of MSNQ, right, we were able to do some manual fixes, and we can run local and functional tests. With MSNQ, now Kiro, right, we were able to multiply our effort rapidly to jump onto production, right? After the adjustment and the running local application, of course, we needed to build a standalone application, web application with, to test the transformation. We enter in a multiple cycles of refactoring, right? We move the packages to core artifact, and I'm not talking about the NuGet packages. We decouple our application or our service and multiple artifacts to not create a microservice with all the code involved, right? There is not. I was in a session this Monday, in MAM320. There was a cool talk, and they mentioned that the thing is not to create a shared monolith, right, or a distributed monolith, right? So you need to think right and decouple your code before migrate to your Lambda. Also, we were able to automate our builds via CDK and code pipeline. And I'm going to go through our timeline in a more explainable way. We started this effort in April, and we were able to transform the code and do the manual fixes in less than two weeks. They take a little bit long, because we needed to decouple this service correctly, right? And during this migration, we were able to replace the legacy NuGet server to use code artifact, CDK, and code pipeline to integrate those. Then on the run, we don't jump directly from Elastic Beanstalk to Lambda. We took a step with AWS Fargate, right? The microservices. Firstly, we tried to run it on ECS Fargate and ran some tests. And the behavior was okay with Fargate, but we don't want to have more things to administrate or more things to do around ECS Fargate. That's not our operational model. We tend to use more Lambdas to our applications. So we removed the containerization practically and changed the project to not use an image, a Docker image for that, and we use in a zip model, right? But the most important issue here is to add X-rate metrics, right? CloudWatch, and of course, get metrics inside of your running application, running service. Because when you migrate your code, the environment of the operational environment, it's much different, right? So you need to keep what is not behaving as you expected. Well, this is a high-level solution, and it's simple like that, right? It's a Lambda. The name is document generator. It's almost the same. All are the same buckets that we're managing. It has their own app database, so we were able to decouple the database as well, and all integrates well with the payroll stamping service, right? So our self-service application named Masorden hasn't to change their endpoints or anything. All it's managed inside this context, right, of the application. Right, so what were the benefits of this migration? Firstly, we could do this in a rapid way. When I started the conversation with you, I said that the product teams were really busy. So we have to help on that. As an architecture and enabling team, we don't used to invest the time on developing new things, right? We help the teams to design, to organize, to training them, but we were able to help with this migration. So we calculate almost a 70% of reduction in that human hours, right? We save like 2 months of the team on manual code, testing, and validation. This was not just migrating the code, right? We needed to also generate new tests, new integration tests, and such, right? Another thing was the strategic refactoring. The team was focused on value-driving refactoring rather than tedious manual work, and I'm not saying that because we had the time, we invest the time in architecture. No, it's the otherwise. Because with this product, we were able to not just react to the problem that we had and rapidly do the migration manually and then go to production. No, we were able to think this broader and decouple all the monolith for further migrations, not just the document generation that I explained. Also, cost savings. We were able to reduce the infrastructure costs by over 40% using Graviton-based Lambdas. So what I'm trying to say is that we were not just going through the basic Lambdas configuration. In this case, the AWS Mexico architects team help us to go further. They say, hey, you can go Graviton directly. And our packages that we are using to generate PDFs are well tested on Windows environments. So we were worrying about not having the same results. So with Amazon Q, we generate more than a couple of Python scripts that automatically help us to validate A/B tests, right? So in the run, we also eliminate the Windows licensing costs. That's an indirect cost that we have on Beanstalk, right? But so that's something that was good for us. Elasticity. On average, we have 1.3 million of payroll documents processed daily. We don't have an issue with that with the Lambda right now. Zero manual scaling. Of course, we were not doing manual scaling on Beanstalk, but we had to be aware of what's happening on the peak days, and then infrastructure team did some changes on it. So that's something that we don't need to be careful for now with our Lambda. Of course, you need to follow the metrics and perhaps you can do some changes on your Lambda in case your demand increase, right? But for now, we're calculating that with the Lambda, we're okay. Then we had zero downtime during payroll spikes. This is just an example of what we had running the A/B testings early this year. And as you can see, we have the duration between half of a second. During the peak invocations, the Lambda still has better results than the invocations are low. So that was good for us. Lesson learned. Well, I'm going to try to summarize this really quickly. As I said before, if you have a running legacy application, you have the privilege to compare with the new version, right? And in case you can run the task more than once, like we do with the payroll slip, right? You can compare the results of your legacy versus the new version. So that when I talk about the Python scripts that compare the PDFs, basically we did it on production, right? We deployed this at the same time we were delivering the PDF that we built in Beanstalk, and in the back end we were having the Lambda generated version. So we were able to compare the stack by pixel and text by text. So in that way, we were confident that we can switch gradually with a canary release that new version. So if you are in that case, I recommend to do this. In case your process cannot be executed more than once, of course, you can go canary always and select your start users as well. So otherwise, there is a win on this. The other thing that we learn, in a sense, is to adapt. Modernization is not just code migration. So don't expect to use Transform and be on the other side the next day, right? But also, you need to be aware if you're going to migrate your application with the help of Kiro to Lambda, you need to be aware of cold starts, provision concurrency, snap start, and package size optimizations, because you're going to migrate something that was running on a monolith and works perfectly because all your singletons, your connections are well oiled in the production environment. not with the Lambda. With the Lambda, you need to be aware of your connection pools, your memory setups, and your connection with other services, right? So in case your internal developer says something that is with Beanstalk was faster than Lambda, don't hesitate and procure this probably issues with cold starts. And just to a question that I want to ask you, I don't know if you many have issues with cold starts or times in Lambda. Yeah. Be aware of that if you are migrating from .NET. Automation. We achieve fully automated validation that I mentioned before, the Python scripts, and other kind of scripts with JMeter as well to do critical benchmarking tests. Right. So now let's get technical. Back to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Armando. Thank you for sharing with us your case. It's pretty amazing what you have achieved in this time. Also, if you have any questions, you can approach to the Grupo Tress team that is here by the end of this session, so you can discuss it further. Now let's get into the AWS Transform service and how it works. Why to modernize your applications? That's a pretty simple question. You may already know the answer, but there are a lot of factors here. For example, Armando mentioned we improved, for example, response times of the services. We moved from Elastic Beanstalk to Lambdas. So from there, we can deduce that we are going to have some cost optimizations. We will, as you can see, the performance improvements. And also the scalability. Having Lambda, for example, instead of a monolith, will allow the teams to actually have more manageability and also more scalability in terms of what they are doing and what they are prospecting in terms of application growth. Something interesting that Armando mentioned is that the service, the AWS Transform service, moves the monolith to actual microservices in containers. You can deploy, for example, the transform code to EC2 with Linux or ECS Fargate. But what Armando did and the team did was to actually migrate directly to a serverless architecture. And that's possible. And that's something that maybe you don't see in AWS Transform right now, but with the integration of Kiro and other tools, it is actually possible. And it took Grupo Tress 2 weeks to actually reach this stage of maturity. So porting to cross-platform.NET, it's hard and slow, and you already know that. That's why you are here, right? And also, the AWS Transform service will take your code. So as you can imagine, everything is agentic now, so AWS Transform is agentic. Now this week, it was launched the next generation of AWS Transform that will allow you to have multi-agent capacity. What does this mean? You're going to be able to actually drive the modernization process the way you like it. So through this agent that was released this week, you are able to actually drive the process of modernization. Maybe if you are looking toward changing the architecture of your services and only porting the code to this new architecture, you're going to be able to do so instead of actually depending entirely on the agent capacities to design this plan. So this is a huge improvement compared to what we had in the past. Also, detecting incompatibilities. As Armando mentioned before, they were able to clean their code and they found that 23 dependencies were just there hanging around. They just removed them and the code actually became cleaner. Then we port the code. The transform agent, after analyzing and detecting incompatibilities, is going to design a modernization plan. And what's going on here? So the agent is going to design a plan based on your source code and projects that you want to migrate. As humans, we need to validate that process. So we need to be involved in this validation stage of this modernization plan. After having the modernization plan and porting the code, we are going to be able to deploy directly to ECS Fargate or EC2 with Linux. And, well, in this case, it was very manual labor. As Armando mentioned, they would take like months to do what they do in a couple of weeks. And a lot of stuff going around in terms of how teams will manage the migrated services. So what we are looking here is how long projects can be shorter, how licensing costs can be cut, and also suboptimal net porting quality. So the transformation process is not porting the code only. It's going to find fixes that can be made within your code, and it's going to recommend a code that has improvements in terms of quality of the code that is being ported, and also quality in terms of security. So this is very important to have in mind. And well, this is the introduction to AWS Transform for .NET. That has two experiences. The IDE, that is the one that we are going to show you today, and also the web IDE. Both behave similarly in terms of functionality and the agents that are behind the service. But you need, for example, in the case of the .NET porting into IDE, that is the second picture here, the integration with the AWS toolkit. From there, you can grab the AWS Transform component and start your modernization. In terms of the web interface, you just need to connect your source code that could be placed, for example, in Azure DevOps, GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, such as in the case of Grupo Tress. And once we have that, we have connected our code, we have integrated Visual Studio, we can start the process of analyzing the code base. So what's going to happen here? These agents are going to index your code, are going to process this part. The code is being moved to AWS processing to actually understand what's your code, how it behaves, the dependencies it has. And once we have completed this part, here comes the transformation process. The transformation process, again, it really depends on a transformation plan. And once we have this transformation plan, we can iterate here. And this is something new. You can interact with the agent to actually drive the transformation process. And finally, the validation, the human in the loop part of every single agentic solution. What's the purpose here? And this is like the whole that this slide presents, is how we can take these .NET Framework applications to the new Linux.NET 8 applications, and now .NET 10. This is a more deep dive. A component that I want to highlight here is this part, the dependencies. For example, the analysis process is a little bit more complex within the service. It really requires to analyze code for incompatibilities, identify and generate replacement code that is going to substitute your actual code. AWS Transform, once the transformation is completed, is going to push this transform code into a version system. It will use the version system you connect it to. And once again, you need to generate a branch to, so can the transformation process can deposit code into that branch. So we can have full control of how the ported code is going to be placed. And here are the dependencies. If you develop your nuggets yourself, you can share those with AWS Transform service, so you can reach these dependency management controls. If no nuggets are provided, or if the service does not find in its knowledge base those NuGet packages, the service is going to try to do the best to actually understand what those packages are doing. So once we have done this, We apply code modifications, we can verify the code. If something that didn't go as expected, we can get back and try again. So this is a process that is usually led by the developer or the architecture team. Now, this slide is regarding the .NET transformation for .NET Framework. It also will transform these MVC Razor interfaces. We have web forms to Blazor integration, and also the cross-platform .NET 8 and .NET 10. So there are a couple of targets more for this transformation that it's going to help us build modern .NET architectures. And also the previous projects, that is WinForms, Windows presentation for desktop projects, Xamarin, for example, and everything else here. For large-scale modernization, you can take several projects at one single shot, or you can choose between all those .NET projects to start developing and transforming one by one, or take or grab all of your code base and start transforming from there. Now, the MVC Razor part, that is pretty interesting. Customer has been asking a lot for this one. It's going to take and transform your code and port it to ASP.NET Core. And also Apple Store and Yes transformation that it's supported as well, and it's below here, that it's going to take your web forms and it's going to transform them into Blazor. So this one's pretty new as well. And how does it look like? Here, Tiago is going to share with us a demonstration on how this works and how to integrate into IDE the AWS Transform components. And before diving deep, this is just a reminder of the connections for code. You can connect GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure repos, and also Amazon S3 code for analysis. If you don't want to actually connect your source code repositories, you can share them using Amazon S3. Also, the view assessment, this is a summary report that you're going to be able to see when the transformation process is complete. And also, you will be able to provide, once again, the NuGet packages. This could be developed internally, or this could be from third parties. Now here, the console experience is pretty the same, but in this case, we are going to have full support of an agent and a chat console that you are going to be able to interact with. What's the advantage of this part? Having the capacity to actually drive the modernization efforts to a certain architecture, to a certain way of coding that you have in your companies is crucial for driving the modernization efforts you are paying attention to. And this is very important, and we are going to be reviewing this as well. This is the integration. Kiro is going to help us. As Armando already mentioned, they use Kiro at the last stages. So what's the recommendation here? It starts with AWS Transform. Once you have ported your code to .NET 8 or .NET 10, use Kiro to actually improve code, make fixes, or port to Lambda, for example, which was what Grupo Tress did. And, well, the SQL Server transformation. Maybe you are wondering what happens to the databases. Well, this is pretty straightforward. We can also port databases, including SQL Server, and manage dependencies within your code. How do we do that? Here is the part before and after the transformation. So this is a transform full stack Windows, and you will have everything here, starting from your application, your database layer, and your virtual machine running on Windows Server. The intention of this part of AWS Transform is to actually modernize the full stack, not just leave it with application transformation. You can focus on that as well if you want to keep your databases, but if you are managing to migrate everything to Linux, this is the way to go. So the target is to have a cross-platform .NET application, run your databases in Aurora Postgres, and also having the infrastructure components regarding ECS and EC2 with Linux. So let's get to the demo. Thank you, Thiago.
Thank you, David. Good morning. What a great achievement Grupo Tress did with modernization of their application. And today, I will demonstrate how you can achieve the same. My name is Thiago Gonçalves. I'm a solutions architect in AWS. And for the past 20 years, I have been developing and modernizing applications. So when we talk about AWS Transform, as David mentioned, we have two options. One is the web experience. If you are in a DevOps team and you want to modernize applications in batch, you will use the web experience. But if you are a developer and you want to modernize one application at a time, you will use the IDE version of AWS Transform. So what I have in here, it's the Visual Studio, it's the IDE for .NET application development. And if you want to modernize your application using AWS Transform, the first step is to install the AWS Toolkit. So you're going to extension and search for AWS Toolkit with Amazon Q. And this is the first step. You need to have the extension installed in Visual Studio IDE. With the plugin, the extension installed, you will have the option to enable AWS Transform in IDE. And we have a few options in here. If you want to use only AWS Transform, you can choose the first option, the option in the right side. And we have the Amazon Q Developer, which now is the Kiro subscription, where you have the AWS Transform and plus generative AI options to help you modernize your application. So in this case, for this demonstration, I will use the Amazon Q Developer subscription. Okay. With the extension enabled in Visual Studio, in the right side, I have one solution here, is a .NET application. In here, I have a project with .NET Framework. We can see here that it's the version .NET Framework 4.7. And as we know, the .NET Framework is no longer supported by Microsoft. And what I want to achieve is to modernize this application to .NET Core version 8. So how can I accomplish this? In the Solution Explorer, I right-click in the solution, and I have this option, Port Solution with AWS Transform. And it will ask me what is the target. Right now, we only support .NET 8, but soon we will support .NET 10 as well. And I will start the job transformation. So as we can see here, the first thing, your application need to be in a state of build. Otherwise, the transformation job will not start. Okay, now my application is building. And what is going to happen right now? The AWS Transform will package all your source code, the package required to your application to execute. And this source code will be sent to an AWS account, a sandbox. It will create a security connection with an AWS account. It will send your source code there. And the transformation happens in AWS account. the transformation job doesn't happen in your local computer. So right now, nothing changed in your solution. So the source code will be analyzed and transformed in an AWS account. And this process, it will take, this is a small solution, and this process, it will take like 15, 20 minutes. So I will not wait until the transformation job it's done. I have one solution in here that I already did this transformation. And when your source code is transformed, when the job is done, you will get the response in the IDE. And this is how it looks like. So in here, I have a summary of what have changed, the projects that I have. In this part in here, in the bottom of the screen, I can see that new files was added in my solution. So before, I had web config. In .NET Core, I no longer need web config. Now I have app settings. So the AWS Transform automatically added the files that was missing for .NET Core application. So all new files that I need to have this application running on .NET Core is now available. And files that I no longer need, like global ASACs and other files that I no longer need, the files was renamed. And I can see there is some change in my source code. And I can see the change that was done in my source code. So in here I can see some references was replaced and some small change was done in my source code. And I can download the summary of everything that was changed in my application and see all the changes and the packages that is changed or need some attention. So in the left side, I have this Linux readiness, which demonstrates for this transformation, the job was not able to replace Entity Framework to Entity Framework Core. So this is something that I need to change manually if I want to make this application running or to execute on .NET Core. So with this report, I have an overview of everything that was done in my solution. So as I said, right now, nothing has changed in my solution. So if I want to apply the change that the job did in my source code, I need to select all the changes and apply the change. And since the project file was changed, it's asking to reload the solution. Now I have all the changes applied in my solution. In the right side, I can see now that I have the app settings, the startup CS, program CS, all the new files required to have this application running to run in .NET Core. If I look in here, the framework now is .NET 8. So all the changes required to this application to execute on .NET 8 is done now. Okay, this is the first step. What about the changes that I mentioned that I need to replace manually? Okay, my application, now it's ready to work on .NET 8. The AWS Transform job, it doesn't allow me to choose more interactions or to interact with the transformation. So it knows how it works, the transformation, what needs to replace, what needs to be changed, but I don't have much more options to interact with my source code. So the only mission or the only goal of AWS Transform is to make your application available in .NET 8. If you need more interactions with your source code, we have another option in here, which is Amazon Q Chat. So this is the next step when you have your application transformed. So as I mentioned, I have Entity Framework, and I need to change to Entity Framework Core. So what I'm going to do now is ask Amazon Q Chat to replace Entity Framework to Entity Framework Core. So this is very powerful because he can access my source code, the solution, understand what's happening with my application, read the files, and replace the files as needed. So he's asking to have access to my solution. I say yes. So he knows that need to execute some commands. He knows what command need to be executed in my solution. And we'll start to replace the packages, the references, and we'll change as well the source code, my CS files that need to be changed in order to have the Entity Framework Core working in my solution. And I can see all the changes that he's making in my source code. So with these two tools, AWS Transform and Amazon Q Chat, I can interact with my source code, add new classes, ask to add new pages, add new routes in my application. All of this just typing what I want in just plain English. So it's very powerful when we are modernizing, or if you want to understand, I'm a new developer and I want to understand what's going on with my application, how the connection with database is going on. I can debug my application, fix errors, all just typing the errors or message that I want to, the goal that I want to accomplish in the chat. All of this without leaving the IDE. Okay. And this is the first step when we are talking about modernizing your application. It's not just moving from .NET Framework to .NET Core. After this, if you want to accomplish a more performatic or reduce costs, the next step is to move your application to execute on Graviton. So now that we have our application able to run on Linux, we can take advantage to move our application to execute on Graviton. And we did a performance test with one application and compare the cost of this application running on a Windows machine, and then later converted this application to run on an AMD, and then comparing with Graviton. You can see the cost after modernize your application and execute the same application on Graviton. The cost difference is huge. And not only the cost, the latency, the performance of this application is much better So it's not only about to modernize your application from .NET Framework to .NET Core. It will give you, a better cost and a better performance when executing on a modern architecture. So thank you, and now we will have Armando say more words.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thiago. And thanks everyone for listening to us. What's next for us? Well, this was just the tip of the iceberg of our migration roadmap. So basically, we're going to continue modernizing our .NET framework projects using the strangle fake pattern. But now, with what we have learned and revamped, we need to rethink this model, right? We need to go further with Hero to accelerate the code development and modernization as well. Of course, we need to adopt a composable serverless architecture to speed delivery and boost efficiency. And of course, we need to enhance for the other features that we have in our payroll stamping services. We need to enhance the SQL database integrations. So perhaps we're going to migrate from SQL Server to another databases model. So I just want to end with this code. It is not about migrating your code, right? You need to think broadly and involve key members of your team. And this time, we were able to work with Mauricio, Roberto, and Pedro's team, the architecture team, and they got really involved in this solutioning, so we can go further and deliver this on time and with the expected results. So don't leave your developers alone in this. And well, that's all from my side. Thank you.